Alright, hello everybody, this is Omnigamer. I'll be discussing some of the tricks and tactics I used in my Hagane run. It starts off pretty quick. There's a interesting setup that I need to do for the RNG here. Killing that bird was part of it. Each of the feathers, as they're falling, calls out to the RNG many times, and that advances it just far enough to get it in position here so I can manipulate a bomb drop and then a second bomb drop. So that's basically as many bombs as I need to guarantee me a safe completion. Getting a couple more allows me to go a little faster in some areas, but having at least that many is just what I need. And then I have an opportunity to get more here, but it's not nearly as consistent, and I don't need it generally, so I can skip by. But yes, Hagane, you have all manner of ways to get around, attack things, and generally blow everything up. This first stage is not much to be said. This entire first level really doesn't need a whole lot of explaining other than coming up. Eventually you'll see the worm skip. In this area, the turtles are random for the most part. They'll jump out at certain times, and it's not 100% that I'll make it through unscathed. This time I do, and that's actually a help of about a second or so, and then we get up into the boss, or the mini boss I should say. I use an audio cue to tell exactly when to start, but he can be done a little faster. I don't have any way to exactly set that up, but it's enough. Here comes the worm skip. Yeah, the worm skip is something that I found and actually found an improvement for later on. And what you see there is that turtle only spawns right when you jump high enough so that you scroll the screen up. And you use the turtle's active hitbox, which very few enemies have an always active hitbox, but turtles do. You use that. It does not have knockback to it, so you can use your invincibility period to jump into the first worm cycle and use that to propel you upwards. It's much more consistent and safer than the previous way I did it, which involved waiting 2 cycles and then timing it so I landed on the worm as it was coming up. This whole section, can't really say much. There's several enemies that I can force to spawn or not spawn based off of which enemies I kill beforehand, but otherwise it goes entirely to just memorizing it and getting down to the very first part. There's an interesting bug here where you can force left and right by just holding down forward as you enter this room. I think it's an artifact for the previous one, and I have a special visual cue for this first hit. The second hit is much more just feeling it, being able to get it right. There is a way to get it even faster than that, where you hit him on the way down, but I've only done it maybe 3 or 4 times out of my 800 some attempts. Moving on, we made it over to stage 2. This is where things get a little more interesting. This first mini-boss doesn't really matter. I use another visual cue by lining up what's going on in the background with where its heads are, and I actually do make a mistake there. I don't kill him quick enough, and that costs a second or two. There's a very fast pattern, but he didn't take it there, and it only saves a second even if he does it. Going here, it is possible that I could damage boost through more stuff here, but the thing is, the stage is on a consistent timer, so going through there, I would still have to wait for the garbage blocks to fall later on, so it isn't worth it to try and go faster. And here, if I have 2 blue flames, I can skip this section entirely, but I do need that blue flame to help me get through, and it makes several later stages easier as well. But that fire trick is just enough to get me through quick and without holding myself back too much. This whole area, I don't know what you want to call them, the flipped columns on the side, will each push you down a little bit. It's not too hard to manipulate, or not to manipulate, but to navigate them. The main thing is making this fire skip here, and it's not too hard, but every once in a while I just forget to turn around in order to do it correctly, and then it's just a matter of climbing it the rest of the way. Getting in that area was a little tight, but that's what it happens. So this boss, he has 4 patterns that he can do. Each one has basically equal probability. There's just knowing how the game's RNG works, it's slightly less than or more than a quarter chance of different patterns, but the ideal, he has one pattern where he'll drop the ball, and that's the only time that he's vulnerable. And ideally he'd do it on the first one, but in this case I need to use it on the second one and get the quick kill that way. So it's not as fast as it could have been, and honestly this bit of poor luck, I'm not going to say bad luck because it could have been much worse, it cost me about 6 to 8 seconds. So that's actually probably the biggest weakness of this run, is getting the perfect luck there. But there's a much bigger RNG later in the run that I need to hit every time. This part goes a little sloppy. I got caught up on some things. Normally I'm supposed to just fly over everything, but in the end it doesn't really matter. It might cost half a second to a second overall, but the rest of the play throughout the stage is fine, and coming up will be pretty good too. So, a little bit about my actions. Even though how it looks like I'm just going through everything, I don't always have invincibility when I'm doing most of my attacks. When you're doing the backflip to move, you do get quite a bit of invincibility. Only the first frame and the very last frame are vulnerable to attacks. So it's easy to get through a lot of things, but not, for example, that last room there is quite difficult to set it up, and I need to get to in just the right position in order to make it work out. This boss is easy to take out so long as I can position myself correctly. I do have a timing cue for when to start, because otherwise the boss might not move into position in time, and then I wouldn't be able to hit the spheres at the top. So from here on we have 2 auto-scrollers. There's nothing really that you can do. In the second stage there might be a little bit of lag reduction, and you can see I work on part of that, but most of it is just making sure that I don't have any lag, or keep it to a minimum. I have not actually tested to see how much lag affects it, but in general it really doesn't have too much of an effect on the overall time in these 2 stages. So instead I'm going to talk a little bit about the other flips and things I can do. When you're setting up for the second and third tumble, second tumble is when you start flashing blue and you get some other attacks, and the third tumble is when you're flashing orange, orange, yellow, whatever, but you don't have invincibility until you're flashing yellow. Everything before that can be hit and is perfectly prone, so it's very dangerous, but it's very vital to be able to set up the up kick. I don't know what else you want to call it, but the vertical kick is crucial to killing most of the bosses and mini-bosses throughout every stage and mission. So being able to come up with common cues when to start it and for positioning is pretty vital in order to make this go quick. But once you have it down, it's not too bad. The thing is, with the vertical kick, it does 25 damage. The move that does the next highest amount of damage in the game is 7. And most of my sword swipes and things like that each do 2. So it is huge to be able to hit with the up kick whenever I need to. This is the only boss that I can't use it on, just because, well, you can't do any tumbles when you're on this, but it's easy enough anyways, because again, the boss doesn't have an active hitbox except for its head, so it does have 2 phases, one, and then once it grows its tail, it's the second set, but either one is very easy. The first phase is actually worse than the second, because it can do a charge attack, and that causes a lot of time, because I can't chase him as well. There's a small... The thing with sliding is that it's quick. It's just as fast as the air tumble and quicker than back flipping through. But if you're on a slope that's going up, you can't use it. So sometimes I'll get into weird positions. There's also a bug sometimes where the screen is scrolling. It won't allow you to do any sort of slide maneuvers, but for the most part I avoid that for this run. The rest of this is just going through normal. These stages aren't too bad so long as you don't stop to fight enemies. There's a lot of other spawn triggers and things like that, and I don't even pretend to know all of them. But the thing is, if I go quick enough, then I can skip the vast majority, and that's what I aim for. This mini-boss coming up, I have an audio cue and position to start off on, and it doesn't matter what corner he starts off on, I will always hit him with that vertical kick so long as I time it correctly. And that saves. I could do it a little faster if I tried to predict where he's coming from, but oh well. This is the probably single biggest skip that I found recently. Before you need to go through the rest of this stage, there's a whole lava section and then you have to climb back up. But if you go over here, you can time it just right and bounce off that guy, and that skips a huge chunk of the stage and saves about 15 seconds over anything previous. There's a bit of lag there, do some lag control just by getting rid of that guy, but then we move on to Jusodama. Jusodama used to be kind of a problem, but I changed up my strategies a little bit, and if you're in the position I'm in now, he'll always go to the same side, but he can go to different positions. But the thing is, I can still always hit him with an up kick from that same position. In this next part, he can also spawn his little shingles at different times, but for the most part, I keep it under control. And then he has a third phase where he just dives at me. I killed him with an up kick, and even though you can't see it, an up kick plus a couple swings will kill him right there. And so he actually has 4 distinct phases of different HP, and all that gone with some good planning and execution. This is kind of just a battle royale section. You have a lot of enemies coming at you, and then you have a ton of mini bosses that show up. Each of them aren't too bad, just so long as I set up the timing correctly. You'll see after this guy there's a set of 3 more enemies, and then as soon as I kill the monk on the right side, I start up my timer for this guy. The thing about the vertical kick is you are still invincible as you're falling from it, but if you cancel it with a downward kick, you can take damage right away, and I use that so I can attack him a bit more. The Doom Train is a little unfortunate, but yeah, he's quite simple. This guy is the quickest so long as you can take him out with that second normal tumble attack, and I did. This is the last major skip coming up, so bouncing off those guys, you can get stuck up there, and that also skips a huge chunk of the level, and you can just rush straight over and into the next mini-boss. This guy has one pattern which I cannot hit with a vertical kick if he does it, but I lucked out here and he didn't. Luckily that pattern is also pretty rare, so it's pretty unusual if he actually does pull it out, but it can destroy a run. The biggest RNG factor of the run is still yet to come, though. This stage and the next are not too bad. It's just a lot of going to the right places. There's a zip in the next stage that can be done in real time, but I wasn't able to get it anywhere near consistently, where you basically go through one of the faces in the wall, and really it only saves time if you do it perfectly. So I didn't bother to try and work it in. And then after this, we'll be moving into Shura-O. Shura-O is probably the biggest luck factor in this run, because in order to get the absolute best time I can, I need to get a 1 cycle kill, and to do that, I need to predict what side his core will spawn on, and right now it's just a guess. There's no way to manipulate it this late into the run, and I just happened to get it this time, so this is actually my own strat and beats out the task by a little bit. Using a bomb ahead of time, you can do just enough damage right before you get the final up kick in to kill it, so long as you get the position right. And here we have Amano Ikazuchi. This depends a lot on how many bombs you have, and I actually came in with a large surplus, so I can spam them with impunity, and finished off all the heads right there. Worked out just great. And that's it. That's the game. There's a lot to talk about that I can't really explain too well. A lot of little things with what to do for this and that mini boss or this boss, what to expect. But yeah, a lot of this game, it really wasn't too bad in the end, other than just waiting for good luck to come. Nothing is too over the top difficult in terms of technical skill to pull off. Just need some good cues and a bit of patience to get out the good luck for it. But yeah, I really enjoyed doing this game. I'm glad I picked it up and made it one of my goals, and I've really come a long way with it, finding a lot of extra skips and time savers throughout. Yep, definitely a fun one, and I encourage everybody to give it a try if they can. I know it's one of the, if not the most expensive Super Nintendo cart to find. The Japanese version is mostly identical, so that's a little cheaper at least. But otherwise, give it a try. It's lauded as one of the more difficult Super Nintendo games on various parts of the internet, but with speed tactics, it isn't bad at all. So, yep. With that, I encourage everybody to give it a try, and thanks for watching. One last thing, after the credits roll, it goes into a loop 2, but the loop 2 is kind of pointless. It's a hard mode sort of version, and it just gives all of the basic enemies and mini-bosses double health, which changes around a lot of things, but in general, it's mostly the same. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys, and Omnigamer out.